Hi, this is Joe Ozimek with the Environmental Service Division at Coachella Valley Water District. And today we're going to be going through, for the next couple of minutes, site-specific chemical training. This is an annual required training through Riverside County Department of Environmental Health and Safety. And we do get inspected at facilities throughout the year. And during those inspections, people that come out from the county ask to see training records. So this fulfills that requirement. I did want to let you know that at the end of this training, there will be a brief quiz, 4 or 5 question quiz. Very straightforward. You'll all have an easy time passing the quiz, I'm sure, as we go through these slides. Very basic information. Again, my name is Joe Ozimek. My contact information is the lower left-hand corner, email address and extension. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Your supervisor will be collecting your completed quizzes as well as the rosters and then forwarding to me that information so I have it on record. So let's get started. So our agenda, what are we going to be talking about? These 5 or 6 points, we're going to be talking about safety data sheets, how the SDS is organized, very basic information. We'll talk about the chemicals they typically handle on site in quantities that are greater than 55 gallons, 500 pounds, or 200 cubic feet. We're going to touch upon empty containers, some concerns with how you handle empty containers. As a refresher, want to talk about that. NFPA, National Fire Protection Association information, the placards, the multicolored placards that you see at sites. We're going to go through those. And then right to know, as an employee of the district, you have a right to access safety data sheets. I'm going to walk you through the process and how to access those. And when you look up information, as you walk through that, you should feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to walk through any SDS with you and make sure that you have the necessary information to make sure that, number one, you're protected and you're comfortable with the materials that you're using in the field. So safety data sheets, 16 sections, with the number of safety data sheets that we have, I'm going to focus or zero in on 3 of the 16 sections. I mean, they're all equally important, but these will probably be the most useful in your day-to-day activities when you work with these hazardous materials. So number 2, hazard identification. We'll go through that, first aid measures and firefighting measures. Chemicals on site. We'll be talking about diesel, acetylene, compressed oxygen, and calcium hypochlorite. A lot of this information, I'll forewarn you, is very repetitive. So, bear with me. I appreciate your time and patience in walking through this, but you'll see as we walk through these, it's very repetitive. In fact, when you look at SDSs, much of the information is pretty repetitive as well. So what I try to do is pull out some of the information and cut to the chase as far as what's meaningful, what's useful to you as far as handling and personal protection. So diesel fuel, okay, most commonly used with our backup emergency generators, okay. It is a flammable liquid. Flash point is 125 degrees Fahrenheit. When exposed to diesel fuel without PPE can cause damage to organs. So I emphasize the fact that you should be wearing your PPE, safety glasses, protective gloves, steel-toed boots. In some cases, you may need to be wearing a hard hat as well. Can cause damage to organs if it's ingested, can be fatal if swallowed, and long-term exposure can cause cancer. So wearing your PPE, you should be concerned with these hazards. You should be protected, okay? Firefighting measures, I guess I want to preface what we're talking about here in dealing with fires involving diesel or any of the hazardous materials. Remove yourself from a situation if the fire can't be controlled and call 911. District isn't asking you to be firefighters. These are just precautionary measures. If you do have a small fire that's controllable, you should be using a dry chemical extinguisher. The ones that are located out at the facilities that are red, those are dry chemical extinguishers, okay? But when you're putting out any controllable fires, you want to make sure that you're wearing proper PPE. If exposed, and again, this is going to be very repetitive, as you'll see, you want to flush your eyes immediately with large amounts of water if the material gets into your eyes for at least 15 minutes. Okay, skin, remove contaminated clothing and shoes. Wash the exposed area thoroughly with soap and water. If you get succumbed by diesel fuel fumes, you want to move to fresh air. I know I'm stating the obvious, and seek medical attention. All right, if it's ingested, do not induce vomiting. Some of the safety data sheets mention to use CPR. Best thing you could do is seek medical attention, call 911 immediately. You don't want to induce vomiting, can cause more damage than anything. So the next hazardous material we're going to be reviewing is acetylene. And I realize looking at this slide, there is quite a bit of information here as far as hazards, exposure, and firefighting measures. Let me just highlight the things that are most pertinent to you, okay? As far as fire measures, you have to be extremely cautious, obviously, with acetylene, okay? Remove yourself from the situation if the fire can't be controlled and call 911. One thing to consider, obviously. You want to evacuate personnel from the area and remove the ignition sources and containers without any risk to yourself and anyone else. The combustion product of this material is carbon monoxide, obviously a colorless, odorless gas. So you want to proceed in dealing with fires in a very cautious way. Best thing is to back down and simply call 911. As far as exposure, again, if acetylene does enter your eyes, the gas, you want to gently flush your eyes with water for at least 15 minutes. Skin, remove the contaminated clothing and shoes, immerse the affected area in water and wash the exposed with soap and water. This would be any residual gas that would get on your skin or eyes. Inhalation, like mentioned in the firefighting measures, evacuate the area, move to fresh air, and get medical attention. Thing with acetylene, it has a distinctive garlic-like smell from the additives in the material. If it's ingested, do not induce vomiting, move to fresh air, and seek medical attention. Okay. Hazards. Hazard, main one is exposure that can cause headache, drowsiness, and dizziness. Forms explosive mixtures with air. This is further down along the hazards. It's the fifth one down. Recommended use of non-sparking tools when working with storage containers. This would be non-sparking equipment, hand tools. Store in a secure area away from flammable materials with the protective cap on, and never attempt to lift the cylinder by its cap. The cap is intended to protect the valve. Okay, so when you're moving this, you shouldn't be moving it by leveraging the valve at the top of the cylinder. Now I'm stating the obvious. Again, this is just refresher information that is outlined in the STSs. Compressed oxygen. Again, a lot of information looking at the hazards, exposure for an extended time to the compressed oxygen greater than 2 hours can cause dizziness, cough, sore throat, chest pain, and breathing difficulty. Obviously, with compressed oxygen, if you have a situation with a fire, it can accelerate combustion, so you need to be aware of that. If there is compressed oxygen, back down and stand down and move away from the situation. Never attempt to lift the cylinder by its cap. The cap, again, is intended to protect the valve. Can't emphasize that enough. Always secure the containers in an upright location or position and keep them from falling, and install the protective cap as shown here in the slide. Firefighting measures, again, I know it's very repetitive. Remove yourself from the situation if fire cannot be controlled and call 911. The main thing with compressed oxygen, you want to stop the flow of the product if it's safe to do so. Wear proper PPE, safety glasses, steel toe boots, gloves. Heat of fire can build pressure if the container can cause it to rupture. So you need to be very cautious in working with this material in a fire condition. Okay. If exposed, gets into your eyes for an extended period of time, again, the SDS indicates that you want to rinse your eyes with clean water for 15 minutes. Don't have any adverse effects to your skin. Inhalation, you want to move to fresh air and seek medical attention. Calcium hypochlorite, similar to chlorine, but less corrosive. Again, exposure items, are listed there for eye, skin, inhalation. Very repetitive. I realize that. Flush your eyes with water for 15 minutes, remove contaminated clothing, and rinse your skin with water for 15 minutes. Move to fresh air and seek medical attention. Again, firefighting measures, remove yourself from the situation. If the fire cannot be controlled, and call 911. The material itself is not combustible under normal storage conditions, but it is a strong oxidizer. What does that mean? When it reacts with other materials, it will release oxygen, and that enhances fires by giving more fuel to a combustible or fire situation. So you need to be aware of that. Material is not compatible with acids, flammable, or combustible materials, and nitrogen containing compounds. So you want to make sure that that material is stored and used separately from those types of materials. For firefighting, you want to make sure that you use water spray to extinguish a fire, because it is a strong oxidizer that can release chlorine. By using a dry chemical fire extinguisher, it will just enhance the fire and make conditions worse. Hazards are outlined here. Recommend not storing where daily temperatures exceed 95 or 100 degrees. Don't want it stored outside. Keep it in a shaded area because the material can decompose and generate chlorine gas. It is corrosive to tissues, and upon inhalation can cause irritation to the respiratory tract. Harmful if swallowed, resulting in burns to the digestive tract. That's why under the exposure, last item there, the fourth bullet item, do not induce vomiting and move to fresh air. Have the person sip a glass of water to dilute the material if it's ingested. One thing I wanted to touch upon are empty containers. When I go out to sites, inspect sites, I'm seeing that empty containers don't always have the material removed. There's always residual material in some cases. Labels are still on them, and people repurpose the containers. Not a problem to repurpose the containers if you want to store materials, store parts or equipment in them, but there are some rules to understand, and this is from state guidance. You want to make sure that all the material has been removed that is physically possible. The other item that you want to be aware of is that there's no more than 1 inch of material in the container, and all the labeling has been removed or painted out. Inspectors will come on site and see things like this, and they will assume that materials in them when in some cases maybe parts or tools are stored in them. Not a problem, like I said, with repurposing containers. Just need to make sure that these 3 conditions are met. And also when you dispose of a container in the roll-off boxes, you want to make sure that the material's been removed. Go out to sites, I'll see material in them, like in the lower right-hand corner, the upper right-hand corner, and can be windblown, can knock over, can get into the soil, into the groundwater, creates an unsafe environmental condition. So just be aware that empty containers must meet these 3 conditions. Other important information to know, NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. I know you've seen these. Again, this is a reminder that these NFPA placards are basically used to give first responders, general public personnel, quick recognition of what the hazards are related to material that's stored and used on site. The blue section of the placard relates to health hazard, 0 being normal material, 4 being extremely deadly. Fire hazards highlighted in red. Something that will not burn, say water, will be ranked at 0. Something that has a very low flash point, like gasoline, which is minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit, would have a ranking of 4. Something that's relatively unstable would have a high ranking. Something like acetylene, for instance, would be ranked at a 3. Specific hazards related to a hazardous material will be outlined in the white section of the box. So what I've done for you is I've gone through and put together a table in the right-hand corner listing the 4 hazardous materials that we reviewed and giving the example of diesel with a ranking of 1, 2, and 0. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to your supervisor or feel free to call me. I'll help you walk through the STSs and these NFPAs if they're not clear to you. Other important information to be aware of, as an employee of the Coachella Valley Water District, you have a right to access information from the SDSs. And I'm going to show you how to access that information. There's a number of ways of doing it. One way is to open up user programs and look for the MSDS or the SDS right to know icon. And I've shown here with the red arrow what that looks like. If you click on that, it'll open up and you can type in and reference which chemical you're looking for out of the library of all the SDSs. Another thing I like to use, I've downloaded it onto my phone, is a free app. If you go to your app store and look for Cameo, I've got the Cameo app web address there. It's a free app. You can download that and it'll give you a quick reference guide to, the chemical identifiers, the hazards, the physical properties, quick reference tool. So in this case, I have chlorine typed in. Nice thing about this app is that if you type in under the lower left-hand corner there under search in that screenshot of the app, you'll be able to reference any hazardous material that we have in the organization, as well as others that might be generated by industry. You can build a library of your chemicals or hazardous materials that you're working with as an easy tool to use in referencing any of the hazards, response recommendations, et cetera. So it's a nice tool to have. Probably the easiest way to access SDSs, though, is to go to the organization's internet and go to safety. And when you open up the safety department section of the web browser, it'll take you to the SDSs. If you double click on SDSs, the screen that appears like the one I have in the lower right-hand corner will open up. You can type in whichever hazardous material or chemical you want to look up. And you can download that SDS and print it out and review the information. So hopefully, all these slides that we've gone through, I know it's extensive and going through a lot of repetitive information, has given you some insight into the safety aspects and was a refresher for you. And will give you some information on how to highlight and go through and look at the SDSs. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I've got my email address there and my extension. I'm available to you as a resource. Again, take the quiz, turn it into your supervisor, sign off on the roster, and I'll get that information and put it in our files. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. Thanks.